All right, we're gonna call this meeting to order. Gary Demashki is logging in remotely. Other than that, could I have a roll call and establishment of the quorum, please?
Mike Wagner.
Here.
Cindy Byteam. Here. James Carmen.
Here.
Mary Bechtel.
Here.
Matt Crowe.
Here.
And it's Gary speaking. Gary, you there?
I am here.
All right, great, thanks.
All right, I have proof of posting. Let's stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we are on to 1.5, approval of the agenda for tonight. So moved.
I'll second.
All right, does anybody have any questions? Hearing none. Mike?
Yes.
Cindy?
Yes.
Gary?
Yes.
Mary Beth?
Yes.
Barb?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
And I will vote yes as well. 2.1 is the approval of the Board of Education meeting minutes from October 26th of 2020.
So moved.
Second.
All right, any changes? All right, hearing none. Mike?
Yes.
Cindy?
Yes.
Gary?
Yes.
Mary Beth?
Yes.
Barb?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
I'll vote yes as well. 2.2 is approval of the payroll accrual / disbursements.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All right, I'll give you a second to look at them. Usually there's a question or two. Any questions? All right, hearing none, we'll call the vote. Mike?
Yes.
Cindy?
Yes.
Gary?
Yes.
Mary Beth?
Yes.
Barb?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
And I will vote yes as well. Okay, we're on to 3.1, which is public input guidelines. Looks like we have 3 that are signed up. Just so you know, you have 2 minutes for your public input. I'll just kind of give you a thumbs up when you're getting close to your time. The first one on here is Kiera Payne.
Hello, we are here as representatives of the boys and girls basketball teams. As we walked off the court last February, we didn't know that that would be the last time some of us would wear a Heights jersey. These past months has been extremely hard as athletes to watch and support many of our surrounding friends being allowed to safely play fall sports. More than half of us here today competed safely in several local and out-of-state tournaments on AAU basketball club teams this summer. Safety precautions were taken at every step, and no one from Heights who participated in these events tested positive for the coronavirus. No one could have predicted the unimaginable situation in which we find ourselves. You have the power to return some normalcy to our otherwise chaotic lives. We understand the severity of our current situation, as well as the importance of maintaining the safety and health of each other and our opponents. Put your faith in us, and as students, athletes, and proud members of this community, we pledge to make safety our priority on and off the court. We hope that you will please consider allowing each family and student athlete the opportunity to compete in winter sports. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Excellent job. All right, next on the list is Derek Adler.
Hello everybody, my name is Derek Adler. On behalf of the boys basketball team, we'd just like to say we follow up on all safety requirements that are required this winter if they are applied.
Thank you, Derek. All right, next on the list is Lyden Haas.
Didn't know I was gonna have this big crowd, but I just, I kinda had prepared in my head a thank you for, with the referendum. That was a lot of work, and I got to see firsthand what it took for you guys to support that and get that to pass through. I really wanna thank you for, I feel hurt when I talk to these guys. They definitely consider what we say, and they, definitely factor that into all their decisions, and they do a really good job. I just wanted to say that.
We appreciate that, thank you. All right, well, that concludes all of our public input for tonight. Then we'll move on to 4.1, which is board president, and I just wanted to also say thank you guys for all of your work with supporting and promoting the referendum, all of our listening sessions, decisions moving forward and do our best to make sure that we're doing good things for the district. That's all I have. All right, we're on to 4.2, which is district administrator / admin reports.
Yep, like we've done for months now, we're gonna do a presentation, but two things I did wanna touch on before we get to that point. Board members, if you saw this show up, page 14, under, what was the headline here? I wanna make sure I'm citing this correctly. Under student achievement, for the state school board convention in January, the topic is staying the course for continuous improvement. It reads, continuous school improvement routines are critical to improve outcomes. Join us to learn about the 4-year journey of one school district that chose to focus on improving instruction using strategic continuous improvement routines that supported teachers to learn and deliver high-quality, evidence-based instructional practices. And that's just a quick synopsis, and that I had mentioned previously that we were fortunate enough to be selected to present at the state conference with CISA 2. So we'll be collaborating with them in the next month or two virtually. We need to record our presentation in December, and then we submit it to WASB, and then they decide based, I don't know if it's quality or what, if we have to make the cut, which ones actually get to go live and which ones are just put online in recorded version. So either way, it'll be one of the sessions. It'll just be a matter if it's just recorded or if we actually go live and do it that day. So cool deal. Proud of the district, proud of our team, because it has been a 4-year journey from kind of what is this to a part of what we do now with our continuous school improvement planning. So shout out to the district, top to bottom. That's cool. And then the other piece with the referendum, someone asked a question. I just said it was a complete team effort, and whether your role was rather small or you were out championing the cause, despite the tough times, I think it says a lot about our district and about the work you guys do and the support that we have in the community, that despite the myriad of challenges we're facing right now, we were able to successfully pass the referendum. So just a big thank you to everyone for that support, and a shout out to the board and the community for supporting public education, because that means a lot. So well done. I'm good.
So we're going to
Yep, let's move on to the committees.
All right. So we only have 2 focal points tonight. The first one is 5.2, which is curriculum goals and standards.
Yep, so first up tonight, we have our building principals, Scott, Dale, and Liz are going to share some updates on some fall assessments. To their credit, to their staff's credit, they went ahead because obviously the learning shall go on, and we are doing whatever we can to help students and help our staff grow. So they went ahead and did some fall assessments, and I just thought it would be important for them to share that information and provide a little context to board members as well. So Scott, go ahead and take it away.
Awesome. So again, kindergarten, first and second graders take the MAP, which stands for the Measures of Academic Progress. We did choose to administer this assessment from home. We do have some students, again, who are in our support hubs who did take it in person, but a majority of them took place at home. And with any assessment that we give, it's important to keep in mind that there are a lot of factors that go into test taking. Did our youngest learners, did they get enough for breakfast? Did they get enough sleep? Did they have an argument with their parents? Any number of things could affect the outcomes of these assessments. And the good news is these are not just the single measure that we use in evaluating learning. So this is just one of the many measures that we see, but I just want to know where we ended up. So this is our kindergartners in the fall again on the ELA reading portion of the MAP. So we had some very good scores at this point. And then Bevan, if we move on, same holds true for math as well. The students that took it were demonstrating a high level of success as well. And then we'll just keep on moving up because it's pretty much the same story all around, right? So then first grade reading ELA, and then next is first grade math as well. And then moving on to second grade, reading ELA, and then finally with math. You'll notice a greater variation in those 4 quadrants. My own thinking there is that we have more second graders in our support hubs than any other grade. And so when these were administered, we followed the protocols we would normally in any school year. So we just kind of set our kiddos free to take it, and we, again, look at the results and make decisions based on that. So we're really anxious to see in the winter how that compares to what we're seeing now. And then the next one is just the school in general. Again, this is our kindergarten first and second in reading and ELA, so a large chunk at this point is demonstrating proficiency, which is fantastic. And then the next one is in math, and the same story does hold true for math as well. And I think, and then we're gonna shift gears here and talk quickly about our SIP work, and it ties in here because you know, at our level, we really want to focus on those very early learning skills in reading and math as well. So this specific set of data was taken from the SIPS, which is SIPPS, which stands for the Systematic Instruction in Phonological Awareness, Phonics, and Sight Words. And it's a very brief screen, yeah, right? It's a very brief screener that just tells us, you know, do students know letter sounds? Do they know how to rhyme? Do they know those very basic foundational skills? And so this is kindergarten here. And what I found most fascinating about this set of data here is, you know, 4K never really got to finish up what they do, right? They didn't get through the entire alphabet when they were doing handwriting of tears and all those other things. So they never really completed their year. So here we are seeing a bit of a deficit in skills, which actually is fine because, again, it gives us a place to start and some information that we can use. So that's how kindergarten fell here. First grade, same type of situation, you know. Kindergarten wasn't able to complete really their curriculum in the fashion that they typically would. So we're seeing some places to start with them as well, which again is wonderful. And then second grade is the last group, and they did quite well on this foundational skills screener, which makes total sense as they had the most experience with these skills and with these things. So very pleased with second grade, but I believe the last one here, overall, it's our entire school, and then I just threw our SIP goal to the right of that. I will not read it to you, but basically we're hoping that our students will, you know, make gains, whether they are near the bottom of that assessment or they're near the top. There is still room for improvement, and so we've got our sights set on every student being able to make gains and show achievement as well. So we're excited about this and how these two assessments kind of work hand in hand. Both just tells us where we are at when it comes to foundational skills and that development. So any questions about the Black Earth information at all? Matt?
With that first grouping of tests, do they tend to stay in their lanes? Like if you're yellow in reading, you're yellow in math and so on as a kid, or?
You know, honestly, it depends. A lot of the times when students this young are struggling in reading, let's say, math is usually more of a stronger skill for them. The reason being is what I've understood is that, you know, math is more right or wrong. It's not as nebulous as reading sometimes is, and so kids can grasp that a little easier. So yes, there is some correlation, but more often than not, it's you'll see those kids lower in reading language arts, but then higher in math. So yep.
Well, these are, we, just last week, we finished up our ACT Aspire testing, in the areas of reading and math. Which, I wanna just give a shout out to our parents and our teachers, because there's a little work that they need to do on the front end to get the browser and get the app on their computers at home. So I see Barb nodding her head, that's always fun for.
Yep.
But in general, it went very well. And parents, they called, they asked questions, our teachers were able to answer most of the questions. Nancy did a great job in the office, so I give her some credit as well. She was able to handle most of the front-end questions herself. She became pretty adverse with some basic expired questions. So in general, that process went really well, and I was a little worried about that piece. So we did send home the test tickets, login information with our material pickup data we had on October 20th. And like I said, parents and students contacted the office, or they contacted the teacher directly if they needed assistance, whether it's getting the app loaded, or if they had questions the day of the test or during the test. And with Aspire, if you get kicked out, you can't get right back in. You have to have somebody from the school get you back in there. So that piece, in general, went really well. I stayed late on the second, and my latest phone call was at 4:40. I had a 5th grade student who called me, and I think he was surprised when I answered the phone, but it was, in about 30 seconds we had him going, and I watched him on my computer when he submitted his test. So that part of it went really well. So we were pleased with that piece. So I share with you the next few slides. Just has the data laid out, and in general, it went very well. This is going to be our baseline data that we use. Next steps for us, we'll be looking at each grade level, and I'm not going to go through all the scores, just give you a moment to take a look. But you can see in general, we're at or above the national average. In our readiness benchmark, we're either above that or very close to where we want to be, just on the data at the national level. So if you want to skip to the 4th and 5th grade as well, just give them a little time in each one, Bev. There's the 4th grade data. So our next step for us is we'll go through individual test results and break down specific areas and see if there's any trends at certain grade levels. It'll help us group some of the kiddos as we move forward. I also added the text complexity piece to this. That gives us, it's a real general information for us, but with that, it can help our teachers in their planning, particularly in the areas of vocabulary, sentence structure, which also will tie into our SIP goal. And so that's one of those data pieces that we actually use with our SIP goal, and just as a comparison for us. And the last slide, I think, there's our school improvement plan, or our SIP goal, and that's specific with text evidence. And all our grade levels earlier gave our beginning of the year assessments. And you can see where we're at. Looks like a scary number. We're only 15 out of 150. That's to be expected, because we expect to hit our goal there. And the numbers in general were right where we had anticipated and where they have been in past years. So a couple of things with the data. When I looked through it, I was encouraged that there wasn't a big drop-off from last spring and the results that we had last winter. So our kids are learning. They're for the most part on track where we expect them to be. And this information will just help us move forward, help us set up some individual plans, and then help our teachers in their future planning. So in general, it was good that we did it. Any questions for me?
So at the middle school, high school, we tested in all 4 subcategories, because I just thought it was time to rip the Band-Aid off. Since we were going to be pushing the tests out online, and I've always wanted to see how our students were doing in English and science, I thought, why not? Let's just do all 4. So we pushed the test browser out to district-owned devices, and then we pushed the directions out to kids to install the test browser. And then Jamie Vandenberg and Tammy Schaefer emailed all test tickets directly to students. And then on the days that we tested, students
Controlled chaos.
Controlled chaos, yes. But we had high participation rate on both test days that we did, and the results follow. So for reading, you'll see where we are with median benchmark and not median benchmark. And then we always look at, as Mr. Green pointed out, we look at complex text benchmark, because that becomes significantly more important as students age. And so we are making gains in the number of students who are meeting that complex text benchmark. And our goal for our SLO for all teachers and for administrators is that we want to have a 5% gain. We go back one. A 5% increase in the number of students hitting the benchmark. So to make that real for our staff is we always estimate, or we put out how many kids that means. How many kids do we need to move to have a 5% increase? And because our N is so small, our number, it's not that many. And when we look at test data, not only are we trying to lift all students, but we also look at who are the students who are right on that cusp of hitting the text complexity benchmark. And what extra push can we give them and target to get them to go up. So then in math, those are our percentages. And you should see some similarities that we start a little low on 6 and 7, but then as kids age, 8, 9, and 10, we're gaining on the percent of students that are meeting benchmark. English, we tested high in. We were getting benchmark in the 80s percentage-wise. And then in science, right around that 50%, except for grade 10, which knocked it out of the park at 60. So, thank you, sophomore. So we're showing gains across, and that's why we look at that text complexity and that literacy focus, because it impacts every subject area. So if you go to the next slide. So our SIP is for our building, our school improvement goal is to increase students' ability to read complex text. Our SLO, which all of us have together, is we're gonna do that by increasing the number of students who can meet that text complexity benchmark. And then the professional practice goal for teachers is having that they are going to change their practice to include 4 of our 6 selected strategies that we will explicitly teach to students so they can have more tools to help them read complex text. So they're all tied together, and we do this purposefully because we want students and administrators to all be focused on helping kids become more literate and more discerning when they read and able to read the complex text that they're going to encounter as adults, not only in the workplace, but in post-secondary education and then just in life.
Any questions for Liz? One quick thing before we move on to our next presentation. When we work with each other and then our staff, and then obviously our staff in turn with our students, but the adult piece within the district and within the buildings, you understand that you can only do so many things at the same time before you just kind of get that tipping point, and now it's just boom, you're done. So one thing that we've talked about for 4 years is not like, I call it flavor of the day, not pulling the next great thing off the shelf that someone tries to sell you that looks really cool and they convince you that you're going to help everyone improve. So we started with this notion of school improvement planning, and then with our concept of professional learning communities. And I mean, the four key questions of the PLC: what do we want students to learn? How are we going to know if they learn? What are we going to do if they don't? And how are we gonna respond if they already did? And I think to kind of boil that down, but then as you think about it, that kind of puts you in this continuous improvement process because you're identifying what's essential, you're assessing if they know it, and now you're adjusting and changing practice to meet the needs of kids. That just kind of puts you into this continuous improvement cycle. And when you look at data like Liz just shared, and you see the progression with cohorts, and how they're improving over time, I can't help but say like that's evidence of good practice, of not just grabbing junk off the shelf and saying we're going to try something new this year because it didn't work last year. That's teachers feeling confident in their ability to teach, and then kids starting to understand the vocabulary and like, oh, we've talked about this before. I remember talking about text complexity with Mr. Green over at Mazo. Now we're doing it here. So that's just a shout out once again to our staff, our principals and our teachers, and then our kids for putting in the work. Because the bottom line is we're just trying to help students grow. And they're not all coming in the same and with the same skills, but we're pretty confident that they can all grow and they can learn. And I think now we're starting to see the fruition of some of that with the data. And we understand these are, this is a unique testing environment, to say the least. So this isn't the sole thing that we're looking at, this is just a piece of the puzzle. Does the testing data align to what we're seeing with the kids when we're Zooming? Does that align to what we're seeing on other assessments in class? That's what informs our decisions, not just like, oh, look at how they did in this test. Well, yeah, for some of those younger kiddos, that might have been a great collaborative effort between them and their parents. That's okay, but we just can't go off one source of information. So I just wanted to share that piece because the more you get into it, the more the dots connect, and it all kind of makes sense and works together. So thank you for sharing, principals.
All right. Well, Matt, did you have anything, because you are the chair and I kind of skipped over. Then we'll move on to 5.4, which is our second.
Hold on, we got another one here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The planning updates
Oh,
under the same topic. Yep. Let me get over to this one. So going to move through the first ones relatively quickly here because a lot of this is just review at this point. One thing I will say though is on Friday, last Friday, our Dane County Superintendent's meeting that we have with Public Health. It was the first time we were graced with the Director of Public Health Madison Dane County, Janelle, joined us, which was greatly appreciated by my colleagues throughout the county. One thing she did mention, and I don't know, it's not like I'm withholding the rest of the story, but I just want to put it out there. One thing she did mention is they are working on updates with the metrics. So emergency order number 9, which was last updated on September 1st. Public Health Madison Dane County is working on updates to that because of, and this is a quote, emerging science, in that she foreshadowed potential updates to that order in December. So I just want to put that out there. If that comes in December, that doesn't rock our world because we had no idea, but what exactly that means, I don't know. What she did say is the emerging science is kind of supporting the notion that schools are not, they're not the root cause of the problem in the community right now, particularly with younger students. So just a little foreshadowing, we'll see what happens in December. Go ahead. Same thing that we've shared now, just the decision-making framework between Public Health, Madison, Dane County, our local census, and then the last piece is just our lived experience. What is our capacity for staff? Are the protocols, procedures, and then our people holding up with where we're at? Shared this last time, just wanted to keep it on there because it is an important reminder, and it'll be very important as Katie talks later about the case counts, despite the trajectory that that's on. If you want to go to the next one, Bev, the last line is still there. I checked the website right before I came down here. It's still there in bold print. Public Health Medicine, Dane County is still supportive of allowing K-2 in-person instruction at this time. We've talked about this notion of turning the dial from the beginning. It's an interesting progression to see. At the bottom one, you can see the estimated number as of November 16th, estimated at 254 students that will be accessing some sort of in-person instruction in the district. That's just a shade over 1/3 of the students in the district that are represented in that number. So the progression is definitely there in terms of turning the dial and trying to do it safely and responsibly as a district. Same slide as we had last time, just with the plans for the start of second quarter, which we're now in. Enhanced online is the primary instructional model 312, the turning of the dial based on our 3 factors, and then the targeted start next week for the K-2 hybrid. And then evaluation window is just always the reminder that through planning, logistics, communication, really to make a change of any large scale in particular, we're looking at least 3 weeks by the time we can kind of pull all of those logistics together. Face coverings, same deal, just a reminder here that if you're accessing in-person learning, the expectation is that you're going to wear a face covering. We don't know what's going to happen at the state level, so if that gets struck down, we want to make sure that it's very clear what our local expectations are. We do have situations with students and they have health conditions or think between a 504 or a special ed IEP. We will work with them on accommodations, and then legal counsel basically advised that the enforcement of this was something similar to address code violations. So a warning, a conversation, is there a misunderstanding, not trying to work with the parent, and ultimately trying to remedy the situation. Mr. Moore.
All right, so 1 week from today, we will have the first day under our belt in our hybrid model, which starts next week. So just kind of a recap on what that's going to look like. We're going to go Monday through Friday. We'll have 2 groups for 3 hours apiece. Just kind of a sub point there. When students are not in person, so they're at home, there will be some expectations, albeit minimal expectations for some work. For example, their skill reinforcement things, some writing, some spelling work, their reinforcement game of computer, just reading or anything like that. But teachers will certainly communicate that with their kids and families as we go along. As far as kiddos who are still online, basically instruction will be delivered in a similar format that it is currently in. And then I also put that materials will be picked up, and I'll collect information about that as well in the next couple of days here. As far as specials or related arts goes, both student cohorts, so the morning group and the afternoon group, will have 30 minutes of a related arts course. Students will just have the same course for the entire week. And then online students will also have that opportunity to participate with their classmates in the same structure as having one related arts course in a week. And I'll get that scheduled to everybody as well. We did have about 60 participants, I think at most, last Thursday, was it last Thursday? The 29th, anyhow.
2 Thursdays ago.
What's that?
I think it was 2 weeks
I don't
ago.
even know. So anyway, it was a really good opportunity to get some information, to answer some questions. There were questions that I didn't even know were out there, which was really good because it got me thinking that I hadn't perhaps communicated as much as I needed to. So I really appreciated everybody's attendance on that. And then, so how we are shaping up here. So in kindergarten, we will have 18 students who are going to remain online. And then we have 2 in-person classrooms, 9 and 7 in the first classroom, and then 9 and 8 in the second classroom. And then first grade, we actually had 34 students who wanted to remain online. All 5 of us rather agreed that was a little much for one person to try and take on. So we actually added an additional online teacher. So the first will have 20 and the second will have 18. Then 2 and second grade, we had 29 students who wanted to remain online. And again, that's a lot for one person to try and manage. So we actually decided, okay, how can we do this so the teacher can manage both of it, both groups. And even though it still seems very lopsided, with 20 in the morning and 9 in the afternoon, that was a manageable thing for her. So we're going to run with that for now and see how that works. And then in person, classroom 1 with 9 and 7, and the second with 9 and 5. You know, in the second grade, one of the things that a lot of folks let me know about was that, you know, having them be in the afternoon isn't ideal, and I do agree with that. It's not what we're used to at this moment. I can speak for myself and my child. I went into that meeting thinking, well, my child will be in the morning. Guess what? He's in the afternoon, because that's how it worked out. So I totally get when families are stressed about that, because yeah, we had to change our plan too as a family, and so I'm right there with you. It's not what we thought, but if anything, this situation has taught us to be flexible and really roll with it and communicate. If it's not working out, please let me know, and we'll do what we can to remedy that situation. So that's what we're going to look for. So any questions about any of that stuff as we keep planning this week? Okay, cool.
With high school, we've had 4 meets of in-person studio learning, and you'll see the attendance records for those classes. Our bio classes have dropped off for attendance. Wildlife has remained consistent, as has metals fabrication. Last week in wildlife, they were taxidermying squirrels, and we're here until 4:30. So we put in some extra time with the squirrels last week. We continue to look at attendance patterns and make sure, you know, that we have, you know, our students interested in attending. What are we seeing? We also look at capacity for students and with the adults and flexibility of students and adults. And again, like if we add more classes, so right now the risk is higher because of the community spread, we would be looking at transportation needs going forward. So that's where we are with studio.
Katie, you on there?
I'm here. You hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So I kept it pretty much the same, just updated the data. Wisconsin is holding the number 4 spot on the Harvard Global Health Institute dashboard. The Dakotas and Wyoming are ahead of us right now. We've kind of been around 3 or 4 for the last few weeks. So we haven't had quite the increase that the other states have had, but ours has also been increasing as well. On the state level, as you can see, it continues to go up quite a bit. The 14-day average, I'm just comparing it to the last time I presented to you guys. We went from 3,490 to the 5,000. We've had some 6,000 and 7,000 case days on the state level, so those have been pretty big increases. The 14-day percent positive rate has also increased, which that's that number we want below 5%. So seeing that increase is concerning, where we know that there's probably more cases out there that just aren't being tested. Those cases that have less symptoms that aren't getting in and getting tested. And I've heard some concerns that we need more funding for testing, so that might be a reason for it as well. Go to the next one. This is now increased where every county is experiencing very high level. When I showed these to you a couple times, I think one time we had 7 counties that was at high. Dane County was at high at one point. Then I think we have 4 counties, and now we're at every county's at a very high level, and many of them are growing still. And our hospitalization rates continue to increase. It's been a slow increase, but they have been increasing. When they first put out this website like a month ago, they were in the low 80s, and then they kind of went up to the mid 80s, and now they're just going up a little bit there for the hospital beds. This one's important to watch overall hospitalization rates, because it's when you get to too high of numbers in the hospital that you start getting concerned that hospitals are going to reach capacity and not be able to treat everybody that really needs treatment. And that would be a concerning milestone to reach. So we are up to, I believe it was 155 people hospitalized in Dane County right now, which, as you can see, that is far higher than what we have experienced most of this pandemic. There you go. So Dane County overall, their most recent data update was last Thursday. Those numbers, honestly, most of them have stayed pretty much the same color. Besides number 9 has turned red again. That one has kind of gone back and forth between red and green, seeing a downward or stable trajectory of COVID-like syndrome. Yep, since COVID-like cases within a 14-day period, just slightly increased. So the threshold has gone above 5% for the positive test, even in Dane County. We were seeing a lot higher than that in the state. Dane County's been lower, which is good to see in Dane County. Honestly, that is probably due to a lot of the things that they have put in place. But the case levels continue to increase. Unfortunately, number 7 down there, that one keeps decreasing, and that's how quickly they are contacting people that test positive. They have stopped contacting cases altogether. They haven't been able to do that, so they just contact cases. They haven't done contacts, but they contact the cases and encourage them to get in touch with their contacts that they would have had. We do contact tracing at the school when we need to, so we help in that effort as well. But over the 14-day period, still holding around 30% people that don't know where they've gotten it from. And that's been pretty consistent over the last few weeks to a month or so. The 14-day average case count for Dane County went up from 190 to 321. We've seen pretty big numbers in the last couple of weeks. And then that 14-day percent positive rate has also increased. As of today, I had it up to 6.7%. And that's a number we want to see below 5. That's in Dane County, that's actually a relatively decent number. It's higher than we want it to be, but it's better than what I'm seeing at the state level by a lot. So that's nice to see. Okay, next one. So when you look at our census tract information, and I kind of broke this down a little bit differently. I labeled the census tracts because I think I potentially confused just a couple people I had questions on. So census tract 131 has Mazomanie in it and part of Black Earth. So that is the biggest area that really has our communities in it. Census tract 129, I've included it because a piece of Black Earth is in it, but it also has pieces of Cross Plains in it. It doesn't have Cross Plains, the whole town itself. It's kind of the areas around it, but I included it because it has pieces of Black Earth, but I have had some questions on that. So census tract 131 has Mazomanie and Black Earth completely. Census 129 has a little piece of Black Earth, but other areas as well. But as you can see, over the last 2 weeks, we've seen a pretty big increase in both of these census tract areas. It's been 90 cases overall when you look at the both of them. We're up to 217 cases in total, and we are seeing that percent positive rate that is over 30%. 41.5% of the cases that we've seen this entire time have happened in the last 2 weeks. So that's a concerning trend that we are seeing in our area. Whether you look at both the census tracts are pretty similar in that data. So breaking it down to the 7-day average cases for 100,000 people, Wisconsin, we are up to seeing 87.1 cases per 100,000. Dane County is staying a little bit lower. It's still a high number. It is nowhere near where it wanted it to be, but it's lower than the rest of the state. It's at 58.8, and then here with those census tract data areas, we are seeing 82.8 cases per 100,000 in the last 7 days. I've seen the trend in this area go up quite a bit over the last 2 weeks. take over for a little bit.
All right, so added on our Wisconsin Heights School District webpage, we have a tab, the data dashboard, which is updated daily with new cases that occur. And Bev, are you able to click on that? The cases that we've had, there's a couple columns here, and the columns have the active positive cases and then the total year-to-date cases. So we are still doing very, very well with the number of staff and students that have tested positive. So credit again to the people, to the staff and the students who are following the rules, keeping safe, doing what they need to do both in school and out of school. And then it should be noted that this is for in-person instruction only. It's not for students who are totally virtual and are staying virtual with their instruction. Okay, go back. And then also on there, and we don't need to open up these links, public health resources, and then when should my child stay home and return to school. Actually, if you could open that number 2 up, because that one's, so this is a really good one, as a really quick reference for parents of when a child should stay home, or if they have a sick child or a child that's been quarantined, when they should return. So it's a good easy reference. We have something almost the exact same for staff as well, which Bev said that she has on her refrigerator at home, right next to her Kenny Chesney picture. Sorry, you can go. We can go back. And then there's a little more detailed version of that that we have on the website, and then coming soon will be links to Katie's House website with some of the data that she's been presenting to you guys, and then census tract information as well.
Okay, so athletics, last week the Dane County Athletic Directors got to meet with Public Health for our first meeting together. So we got to ask some more detailed questions and get more thorough answers on sports than what we had been getting in the past. So some of the highlights is, they talked about when changes might occur, and we had to press them for a timeline, and when pressed, they came up with about 2 months. So around January is when restrictions and their estimation would be changed. Those are conversations that are ongoing right now, but they anticipated the changes to them would be around the new year. So just to recap, currently those guidelines state that Dane County schools cannot compete against other schools in the sport of basketball, which is obviously the program that we're concerned about here. Our co-op schools would be competing under their host school guidelines, which would be in different counties, so they would have different guidelines. So our, some of the highlights again that are, the indoor max is 10. Public health clarified that you can have 20, as long as they are distinct areas. So you have 10 on one half of the court, 10 on the other half of the court, and then, obviously you can do that across multiple gyms or the weight room, but you're sticking with your 10 in a group. They said that the biggest barriers to athletics happening at this time in the eyes of public health is the social distancing guideline. They said that until that requirement is not something that is recommended by their experts, then they would not anticipate any changes with athletics. So
the social distancing piece and masks as well are two of the biggest barriers. They mentioned the consequences, and they did state that they do not have the authority outside of this county to enforce these guidelines. So when asked specifically what would consequences be for a school who traveled outside of the county, like Marshall did in the fall and Edgewood did in the fall and plan to this winter, when asked what the consequences would be, they just said that simply they don't have jurisdiction on what goes on outside of Dane County. They're only focused on what happens in Dane County. So overall, my take was that I was not incredibly optimistic that their guidelines would change for winter sports, considering the fact that they're looking at social distancing as the biggest barrier. My thought would be, my opinion would be that if we did stay in Dane County, that we would be beholden to those guidelines and they would not change for the winter sports, meaning that we would be restricted to no competitions. Go ahead. One of the things that came from that meeting, we did a little roll call of the teams who were traveling outside of the county. That would be Marshall and Edgewood. Belleville and Deerfield will be making decisions on that soon too. Belleville tonight. And all the other Dane County schools said that they currently intend to follow the guidelines and will not compete. Everything these days is subject to change, so that could be something that would change with each individual school too, but that was their current position at the time of the meeting. I won't go into too great of detail on what this proposal was from the Dane County Conference, but it was intriguing in the sense that it will take any amount of hope we can get at this point with athletics. And one proposal that came out of McFarland that would still be in its early stages is to recommend that Dane County schools play within their own county and create their own leagues based on large school, medium school, and small school, which would give about 6 to 7 team divisions in Dane County. And the proposal asks for the ability to host events in that case too, under guidelines, of course, that are similar to what are out there right now. But again, I'm throwing this out there because I think it's an intriguing proposal, and it's probably a little too late. I think it's in the early stages still, and it's something that would need to be pitched to public health. And I hate looking into my crystal ball, because my crystal ball, I think all of our crystal balls are defective lately, and they're hard to read. But this is one that I wish would have come up a month or two ago, and maybe it could have gotten more traction. But I don't anticipate something like this happening, but it is on the table. So in the Capital Conference, right now all the teams are going to be in with the exception of Columbus and Belleville, which we'll decide tonight. So we'll find out what those two schools are going to be doing as far as allowing competitions or not. We did, as athletic directors in the Capital, get together and outline specific safety procedures that everybody would have to follow for conference games and divisional crossover games as well. Some of the highlights from that is that all teams must wear a mask regardless of the state order. So that would be teams, personnel, coaches, fans, everybody would have to wear a mask even after the state order expires on November 21st, if it does not get extended. That's something that they would revisit in the middle of January, but for right now that would be a conference rule. Limited attendance to the games is something I think we've all anticipated. It's ranged. Most schools, I think, are handing out 2 tickets per family, anywhere from 2 to 4 tickets per family. And then health screening verification by the coaches and athletic directors on game days that's shared between the schools. So, some steps that we would take if we were allowed to compete. We did develop a waiver, or rather Boardman and Clark developed a waiver. Not a legal expert, but it appears pretty thorough to me, and, you know, I think it's outlined really well, you know, so it doesn't take a law degree to read it and understand it, so it's thorough and it's accessible. Other precautions, we would limit our practice time, we would limit our game schedule, make sure that we are communicating with our opponents to make sure that we have safety guidelines in place for those non-conference games. Obviously, the conference games already have existing protocols that we would follow. You know, and then, you know, with the limited practice time and the limited game schedules, we're just looking at, you know, decreasing the amount of time that the kids are spending in the gym and are, you know, dispersing the aerosols that are really spreading this disease. So trying to limit our exposure and being mindful of our game schedule. Our practices would follow our current DHMDC guidelines. So, you know, practices would include 6 feet of social distancing and no contact between the kids. All the things that they're currently doing when they go to open gyms anyway. They would be wearing masks and all of that. When we look at transportation and our numbers, we would be looking at most likely 1 bus for the girls. Right now, that number would be estimated to be around 20, and 2 buses for the boys. So we're looking at, you know, for JV contests, the JV teams would leave first, varsity would leave later, JV would come home immediately following their game, and then varsity would be traveling separately. One of the things that the coaches and I talked about is just, you know, keeping in mind how the spread of the aerosols is really, you know, one major part that we have to worry about. Talking about no talking on the bus. The coaches weren't super heartbroken by that one, but, and it's, you know, to me, it's a small step, but it's a big step in preventing that spread. You know, transportation would be, as we're, you know, getting the kids on the bus, that would be a major area of concern. But if we take some precautions like that and, you know, also being mindful of our travel and how far we're sending these kids. So we're not sending them 3 hours on a bus and they're just hooting and hollering without masks or anything. This would be a very controlled bus ride where they have masks, you know, they are not talking, you know, they've got their earbuds in, their phones, and they're all business on the way to the game. One code of conduct amendment that I want to throw out there that some schools have done would add to our code of conduct a major violation for kids who do not report a positive test. This has been a major fear with people who bring back in sports is, well, what about that kid who does not want to let their team down, so they come to school even though they're feeling symptoms, you know, and that's a legitimate concern. So this would be seen as a deterrent for that, you know. And it's, I don't like talking about this one necessarily because it does put, you know, the possibility of punishing a kid who's in this situation. And I don't like that thought. However, it's to me seen as a deterrent. This is an extra safety measure that we're taking. It's not, our motivation is not to punish, it's to prevent. And to have some language in there to help us in that regard, I hope can prevent kids from making a choice like that. So, and then we'll just have, you know, increased involvement from our athletic trainer. She's been awesome throughout this process. She's got a lot of work, you know, already she's done a lot of work with, you know, mitigation in this area, and, you know, she works in the field every day. She's got a lot of good ideas. She's willing to, you know, be in here and get her hands dirty and make sure that we're doing things properly, and also helping the coaches with preventative measures as far as, you know, soft tissue injuries go, and really taking an active role in injury prevention, which would be a concern too, just with the lack of physical activity and everything the kids have had. And, you know, finally, I just wanted to say, you know, whatever is decided, you know, I have the utmost confidence in our coaching staffs to do what's right. You know, they're willing to do whatever it takes, and I have complete trust in all of our coaches that they'll put the kids in a good position. And, you know, our kids too, I've got complete trust in them too. I mean, this is, for both groups, I always tell the officials, you're not gonna have any problems with our kids tonight. And that's always true. You know, sportsmanship on both these teams has been high, really high character, you know, on both teams. So I do trust that we have the staff and we have the kids, that whatever's decided, we will make it work. Any questions?
Okay, boys and girls basketball. Coming home from a game you just won, how hard is it gonna be for you guys not to talk?
Point taken.
Just a question. Yeah.
You know, I will say too, you know, past practice, we have had parents driving kids home from games too, you know, so I wonder what the average, you know, number of kids on the bus is coming home anyway.
I was just wondering if just the PPE, swapping out masks with the heavy respirations and saturation of the mask, what are they anticipating with that sort of?
Are you asking like how many
How many
masks would
you
they go
I
through
guess is
per
my
day?
question. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's one conversation that we were having with our athletic trainer too, and she definitely recommended having some backups. You know, so that's something we've talked about and we're prepared for, and, you know, maybe different levels of backups as we're looking at, you know, what some of the nicer masks could cost. And, you know, so some of them it would be feasible to have multiple masks, but definitely having some backups on hand just for that exact reason.
All right, so Pupil Services, I just wanted to give you an example of the secondary survey that we're sending out, that we're doing, checking in with students and parents. So this option for the secondary level is having students being able to submit a referral themselves to a counselor or our school psychologist or school mental health specialist. And, you know, asking if they need any type of support, academic, social, emotional, what concerns, so a little more detail in each one of those. And then if they would like to meet either individually with Ms. Schmidt, Mr. Wong, or Mrs. Horner, or if they would be interested in a small group. And then parents can also refer their child to meet with one of our pupil services staff as well.
All right, thumbs up. Just our update that we have every meeting regarding food service, so up to 5,423 breakfasts and over 6,000 lunches, so those numbers keep pushing up, which, as we've talked about multiple times now, good news for the school district, and especially good news that the program was extended through the end of the school year, so keep spreading that word. And Rebecca's waiting for some guidance so she can get her October reports and claims submitted for food service. But once again, applaud her level of preparedness and expertise. Been a huge asset to the district, one that can't even really imagine what it would have been like without her. So very thankful. As always, end with this slide kind of on where we are today and upcoming things. I guess obviously board members, and then for the student athletes that joined us tonight, 2 weeks from now, we're going to have to make a decision kind of regarding where we're at with winter activities, or more specifically winter athletics. If that programming is going to be anything beyond the context of what Public Health, Madison-Dane County is recommending, well then that will happen 2 weeks from now at our next board meeting. As we've done the last couple of meetings, board members, I'll be sure to send you the PDF of the presentation, so if you want to click on links or look at other information, you can certainly do that. And then just once again to the students, appreciate you coming tonight. I can't claim to understand, because I didn't have to do this when I was 16 and 17 and 18 years old, so I'm not going to pretend that I know what it's like, other than I'm sure it does stink, and I am sorry for that. I wish it was not, this was not happening for any of us right now, because it stinks across the board as an adult, as a dad of 3 young kids that have been home for 8 months as well. I agree, it's not fun. So hang in there, stay positive. As Mr. Pickett said, you're a good group of students, and we're very proud of you. And we'll see where this goes in the next couple of weeks, and we'll go from there. But I thank you for coming tonight. Board members, any, follow-up questions on this for now, or things that we want to bring up?
I have a question about back to Liz. When the individuals don't show up for in-person, are they calling and saying why they're not coming for in-person, for the lab time, the studio time?
We have a small number in each class that said that they weren't going to come in person, but we do mark them absent and then follow up the next day.
I'm just curious, like the one day in like next sports, we had no one. So I was like, is it because people are?
That's the teacher was ill.
Got it, okay, that makes sense for that one, thank you.
Yeah.
I was like, no, nobody showed up for that day. Oh my gosh.
No.
Thank you.
Sorry. I should have put that in there. My bad.
Any other follow-up questions for now for the administrators? Good, James.
All right, well then we will move on to our second focal point, which is 5.4 facilities and transportation. Mike Wagner is our chair.
I just want to thank the community for supporting us. Hopefully continued, and we can make a lot of vast improvements here on our buildings and do wonderful things, hopefully.
All right, well then it looks like we have discussion on the next steps based on the passage of the referendum.
Yeah, so I just, obviously, Jim Weedy and Chris Garrity are here from Performance Services. They just have some information that they want to share with you. Just want to preview this by men if I'm speaking out of turn. I think this is going to be the broad overview, provide some information and give you an idea on some timeline and other things to expect, because this could turn into an avalanche real quick. So we're trying to keep this broad and kind of a 30,000-foot view, what to expect, and then dig in, obviously, in details here in short order. But for now, we're going to kind of stick at a large overview scope. Kids, if you want to leave, you can. You're not going to hurt anyone's feelings. I see you talking. I get it. I go home too, so go ahead. You can certainly leave. Yes. We appreciate you coming.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, board members.
Thank you, guys. So Jim and Chris, if you want to just kind of take it away and provide some info.
Sure. First thing, I want to say congratulations on a successful referendum. There was a lot of hard work going on behind the scenes, so I just want to acknowledge those people and just say you did a really great job. So, what are next steps? Like Jordan said, we're going to keep this real high level. We're going to ask you some questions, just put some things on your radar, give you some timelines, not to be answered tonight, but just so you're thinking about it, right? Myself and again, our senior architect, Chris Garrity, will kind of go through this agenda. And any questions, don't hesitate to ask, but like George said, we don't want to get too far into the weeds. So first, owner's rep. Okay, what is it and is it good for you? So an owner's rep usually is someone who works in favor of the district that helps with construction projects when there's an issue. We're your owner's rep on this project. Mike Betcher that you met, our project manager on some of our presentations, he will be in a trailer on site every day for this project. He's going to hold weekly progress meetings, which you're all invited to. You can come once a week, we come whenever, we'll get that out to you, but he can also put down reports that show what we did last week, what we're looking to do next week, what we're looking to do 2 weeks, and then present those to the board, whether it be once a month or once every 2 weeks. Some schools will look to hire a separate owner's rep, but that's usually when you hire an architect and a CM. So when that happens, they're both working for the district on the project, but they're also both separate companies. And when the CM says, all right, we got a beam that's going this way, and we installed it, and the architect says, no, I designed it this way, and the CM says, no, it's this way, and they come to the school and say, we got a problem. And then that's when the owner truck goes, here, we'll handle it. Where we're on working for your behalf, Chris is on the next cube next to our PM, who's next to the engineer, saying, what's the issue? You come to us and say, this is the issue, we fix it. So that's kind of the definition of how an owner's rep works. I'll let Chris handle the rest of the.
Yeah, so, thanks everybody again, congratulations. As Jordan alluded to, we're gonna share our work plan with you guys, just because we wanna make sure that communications is really, across the board with everybody. So, we're not gonna go through it today, but just so you know that there is a work plan that we're working off of. There's a couple things we're gonna talk about today that is just things to start thinking back in your mind at how you guys wanna do this. But the big question I want to talk about today for you guys, and really want to get some impact, because I know we've been sitting listening to a lot of great presentations, is what does successful look like for you? So we saw a lot of great presentations about educational benchmarks, which is really important. Well, we want to do the same thing with your construction project, is what, outside of the number of classrooms and everything else, is success for you in your district. So I'm actually going to open it up to anyone if they have a thought on big picture, when you walk in at the end of the day, be like, this is great, this is beyond my expectations.
I think for me, one thing that I think gets lost in facilities and updates and HVAC and, is that this isn't just another commercial building, this is a house for learning environments and opportunities for kids. And so I feel like if we can make the money go as far as we can, do the necessities, do everything we have to do, but still prioritize the kids and the staff and the teachers and remembering at the forefront that this is housing children who we're trying to provide an education to. In a nutshell.
No, that's great. Yeah, I like the idea of the house of learning is
Yeah.
warm, it's inviting, it's something that's not just glass walls.
Right.
I think when I talked to people that were probably more on the negative side about proceeding with it, I want to feel like it is safe and maybe assuage some of those concerns they had that made them vote against it. So with the traffic or just the school safety, but
Highway location, playground.
and the efficiencies that we would gain, I'd like to see those come to fruition by the selling point of saying we're going to save money down the line by consolidating it. I'd like to see that come to fruition.
Other benchmarks.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we have a little bit of a unique situation because it's not like we're creating a gym where everybody gets in a suit all the time. So I don't know if there's a way to have some sort of accessibility where you can kind of be able to have people come in and see what we're doing and to see the positive impacts it has on learning and things like that. 'Cause, I mean, we certainly experienced that people were like, well, back in 1975, when I was in school, it was like this. Well, things have changed a lot since then. And how do you kind of explain that or show that to people so they understand it?
And I think something else that's been lost that has reemerged is this idea of continuity that, Black Earth is suddenly getting this new glamorous building, but that there's some continuous fashion that flows throughout the rest of the buildings, and that also built into that there's some type of separate individualism between the schools where they can take some ownership and maybe having some say in what the middle school looks like versus the high school versus, but yet some continuity that you don't leave one end and then end up in the other and, kind of have that
So are you like saying we have a legacy walk for the high school, if we have something like a community type thing for the elementary school?
Well, and even in design too, is what, I mean, I think some people thought when the middle school got added that some of the character got lost and then it's, separate entities where Black Earth was divided from Mazo and now we're one site. So how do we have this continuity of one, but also remain, some individual character between?
I'd like to see a small, if we can integrate, with one of our shop classes, having, once we get to a certain point, having a project that they can do for that they can say, hey, I helped build this part of it, as part of their class, hey, for their class, they get to go down and do, I don't know what kind of project, but some kind of project that they can kind of claim as theirs as part of the school,
There's a commons area, benches.
Something that they can build to be part of the school. I think would be.
Or you can have them build 2 benches in each part of the community, which Mazo and Black Earth each painted or something. I mean, I've seen kindergartners do a lot of swing hammers, but they come up and start doing something that's theirs, they bring it together.
Well, and I think that reinforces the concept that one of the things that a one site offers is mentorships and a lot of collaboration between everybody. And so that just kind of reinforces this, I'm building it, but it's used here, and I have my hands here, and we're all one,
And if we can involve our local businesses in any way, I think, we talked about that. That's gonna go a long way.
I wonder where we could find
Gary, you have anything?
No, I just like that last comment. I mean, we've got a plethora of different contractors and people who do some good things in the immediate area, and certainly want to give those guys a shot, or those people a shot to be involved with this. I think that's going to be really important going forward.
They're having their work to paying for it too, so they want to make sure that they've got an opportunity. Okay. So that's the big questions I want to get from you guys. If there's anything else that you come up, middle of the night, you can't sleep, let us know. I'd like to probably dive in a little bit at some point about how we do that continuity, and each one they're separate but coming together and we're all one. So how do we get that incorporated? So that's going to be, these are great benchmarks for us to kind of, as we design, start making sure that we keep those.
Chris, real quick,
Okay.
and this is abstract, yet in my mind it seems tangible. Is the notion, we talked about this for a couple of years as we've gone through facility planning. The notion that we're not like, we're not a place that needs all the frills and all of this, but at the same time, and I'll just speak for myself, I also don't want, when this is done in 2 years, people to walk in and be like, really? This is a new elementary school in 2022? Like, they just put together a building and it's pretty non-overwhelming. Like, it's underwhelming. And I guess, so to me that, I know that's a somewhat abstract concept, but it's like the balance of practicality, but yet with a modern school experience, environment, the collaboration spaces, the functionality. I guess that for me is what I want to walk into in September of 2022 and be like, man, this is highly functional. This isn't over the top, but this sure as heck isn't Black Earth Elementary School either. This is a new level for our district. So I guess that's just, in a big picture, something that will just feel right. I think when you see it and you feel it. So how we do that, a lot of collaboration.
Having something to say, community come in and say, I'm glad we spent money on this.
Yeah.
Comparing that, walking to Black Earth and Mazo and say, they walk in here like, yes, we didn't spend a ton of money, we didn't go to the top, but I'm really glad we spent the money on this. Yes, this is definitely an improvement.
And maybe we can't afford all the bells and whistles, but maybe a bell, a whistle.
Yeah, a bell.
Bring in the Liberty Bell.
So And, you know, these are all your benchmarks to make sure that, yes, we want to make sure we have the right number of classrooms for you guys. That's the lowest level. We want to make sure we're succeeding much beyond that. So this is going to be our list, and obviously we're going to keep growing on it and challenge aside, and, you know, if you have other ideas, let us know, so. The rest of it, Jim's going to hand out, we're not going to go through it all today, but you're going to start to see our work plan. One of the big pieces, you're going to start seeing we're going to have lots of meetings, we're going to meet with staff. Some questions that we're going to have from you guys, the administration, is who's going to be your leadership group? At some point, we need to determine a small group that will make final decisions. Everyone's going to have many different opinions, and obviously we have to balance that with budget and space and everything else. So we need to develop a group that's going to be that final, small group that's going to be that final say is, sorry, third graders, you can't get your hot tub, but seventh graders need something else. So
School board gets that.
school board, yeah. So there's going to be tough decisions that are going to have to be made, and we just need a group that's going to be leading that. And then who else do we need to talk to? How far do you want to meet with principals, teachers, representatives, teacher grades? There's a lot of different, every school operates a little differently. So we'll just need to get that from you guys on how you guys want that communication to go. And work through that. And then if there's anyone in the community too, obviously schools are not just the teachers and the administration, it's community. So if there's anything on the community side that you want us to meet with or present at or anything else, just let us know too. Just to make sure that they supported you guys, we want to make sure that we're communicating back to them and supporting them as well. You also have in there our current education program, that's just our recipe list, and then the floor plans, just so we kind of know where we're at. Has changed since the last time we talked, but every time we meet, we want to make sure that we give you a full update of where we're at. Last piece is budget. No changes obviously, but we also want to talk about budgets. We know that there's a line item, and that's the max that can be spent. So if there's changes on anything, we also want to make sure that either pot or less or more, we always want to make sure we have that conversation. So because at the end of the day, we can't come here and show you something that you can't afford. So we always want to talk about budget, and if something we found, you can save some money. If you want to add something, whatever else, we can have that conversation. The last piece I know is auditorium, is very important. We're also working on that behind the scenes. We do need to meet with some of your theater people to make sure we understand what the actual program, what that recipe needs to be, so we can make sure we put that on paper. I know that was very quick. Congratulations. Big sigh of relief that it's done, but also the work is just starting. So.
I guess from our standpoint, you know, I mean, obviously, if you look at the planning schedule, I'll just say for myself, I think this then allows me to communicate with the board and then the administrative team and the maintenance staff and everybody else as clearly as possible. Is to kind of, we need to calendar these things, and we need a deadline, and like, all right, here's what you need from us, here's what we need from you. We need to come together on this date, each party bringing this to the table, and because, yeah, just in the midst of everything else, and I mean, even with the referendum campaign in the midst of COVID, if we wouldn't have been lockstep on communication and a plan, things would have fallen apart real quick. So I can't stress that enough. I think just for us to know what to expect and when to expect it from each party, that'll be a crucial part to the communication and the success of this process as it goes on.
So I think our next steps is to sit down and kind of start digging into the weeds and bring it out to everybody else.
Here's what we need from this group, here's the feedback we need, so that we can just be as clear as possible with each other and with you in terms of here's how we see this working for our school district. And then you have to kind of assign roles and get people on board with that, because that, yeah, that's going to be very important.
And it's going to go,
yes.
You brought up the auditorium.
Yeah, I guess I just, we had talked a little bit, put it on the agenda. I mean, from the board standpoint, we had talked about this in July and August after the resolution and after the question ended up on the ballot, and said, if this was successful, we're gonna circle back on this and kind of reconvene and have that discussion. So I think for us to get our feet in the ground for a month is probably what we need. But then to bring that back at our next discussion meeting in December, to really assess that piece, because to get that on the ballot in April is end of January resolution. So talk about it's gonna go quick, that's a couple of months quick. So just to kind of plant that seed, if there's information you need from myself or from them, leading up to that meeting in December, yeah, let us know. Anything else for you guys that you think, I mean, I know we could go forever.
I mean, we got a whole fall before we talk about it. We wanted here's just where we're starting.
Yeah, so that's the work plan. Jordan will reach out. We actually have dates assigned to some of those. We'll just need to sit down with you and make sure that, this week is our intent of having meeting number 6. What day works for whoever we're meeting on that. So this week we'll circle up and have a good conversation about actually hitting some of those tasks.
It's exciting.
Yeah, it really is. We had said 2 weeks ago when we were at our meeting, one way or another in 2 weeks, we're either gonna talk about planning for something relatively exciting, or we're gonna go back to the drawing board and say, what do we do next? I am happy we're having this conversation and not the what do we do next conversation, because that one wouldn't feel so good to be having, so.
So behind the scenes, Jordan will reach out to you for dates to make sure that it's okay. Obviously, your campus is pretty empty. We will have our site survey group out here. They're going to make sure that they get all the contours, either your grass and your lawn. We're also have a geotechnical group that's going to come out here. They're going to drill some small holes just to see what the soil is, just to make sure there's no surprises underground. So there's a lot happening behind the scenes, and as you drive by, you might start to see stakes coming to the ground. That's our site crew coming out. So there's teams working behind the scenes, getting everything started to pull together.
One thing I just want to mention real quick, because you brought it up, and Mike actually brought it up to me before the meeting. I think it was already Wednesday, Jim, when we talked on the phone the day after. I said, well, now that we know this is a go, the one thing that we talked about very informally previously was the possibility of solar. If that's something we're serious about, clearly now is the time to plan for that, because as things are being built, as systems are being installed, we need to make sure it ties in so we're not going back and kicking ourselves and redoing work. So I planted that seed with Jim that as they start these early phases of design, to keep that in mind, because I think that's something that, well, number one, the return on investment is phenomenal, and number two, for our school district, our community, and our location, that could be something that like differentiates Wisconsin Heights from others in a very positive way.
Is that something that, depending on the leadership change at the federal level, that there could be certain incentives for the more greener type, is that something worth waiting on?
There's all kinds going right now.
Okay.
Yeah. There's also a educational piece to it too.
You never know, but I think the incentives, and obviously for us, by the time any of this comes to fruition, we're gonna be well into the new administration. But I think between the incentives and even some of the research we already have done, the payback on the investment would be something for us that not often you can see a return in, let's say, 10 years. This would be one thing that we probably could. So that just, if people ask, because I've had people ask me about it in the community over the years, that is something that we're not forgetting about, and we want to try to tie in, and we'll see if it's feasible.
And planning now doesn't affect us too much, but it leads us to, you know, the electrical panels, make sure that we have the capacity that we can plug it into, so you're not going back later, there's no spot to plug it into. We can plan that in advance, there's not a major cost difference, but planning it allows us to do those things, so if in the future there is some national incentives or local incentives, it's easier to connect to.
Well, just the other piece to that too is financially, obviously, the 27 million is 27 million, and that number's not growing. But we've talked about our capital projects in our Fund 46, and we've utilized that, and we've updated that project list, and that would be another option that conceivably down the line, if this is a decision that we think is important for our school district, that could be a funding source as well for this project. So don't think that by virtue of doing this, we're automatically taking dollars out of classrooms and things that we kind of said we were going to provide. We would have another potential source, so it's good to think about.
That actually brings up a really good question. So we're working on a wood project right now, and we got hit with the really high number of the prices that really inflated. Have you guys experienced anything in your current projects of really seeing that influx, or what could impact us?
So wood surprisingly is very expensive right now.
Yep.
Steel went up a decent amount. A lot more suppliers are not willing to hold their price very long just because they don't know. So obviously what we need to do is we need a plan for that. There are certain things, wood is going to be whatever it is. When we do budgets, we want to build out to budget, so you determine what your must-haves are that have to go, and then you start adding on top of it. So at the end of the day, we can build up to that budget and make sure that we're not exceeding it. We're in contact with a lot of trades right now. We've got our joint venture PMs calling trades right now, saying, hey, what's going on? What can we do to lock in early? What can we do to make sure that we're mitigating this? So we're on top of it.
We're already getting this on the radar.
Yep.
So
Yeah. What can you do instead of what do you do, concrete or steel, do concrete? I mean, we're having those conversations now, knowing that there's things out there.
Any other questions? All right.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, guys, for coming.
Well, I guess we can move on to district business student issues, 6.1. Is action on open enrollment in students for 2020-2021.
Does anyone want to make a motion?
I was just gonna say, I will make a motion to accept the open enrollment.
Second.
Yeah, you were fast.
No.
It was pretty delayed.
But you still committed.
Is there any discussion or questions for this one, guys? All right, here you go, we'll call the vote. Mike?
Yes.
Cindy?
Yes.
Gary?
Yes.
Mary Beth?
Yes.
Barb?
Yes.
Matt? And I will vote yes as well. Teacher meeting dates, I don't think anything really changed. We did eliminate that last meeting in December with the caveat that we couldn't return it if we felt there was need. So that's the one I see. Is there any other questions about that? Okay. Probably have to read this whole thing every time.
You can just read it as the small part.
Yeah, so after this, we will have a roll call to adjourn into executive session pursuant to Wisconsin statutes 1E, deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session, and G, conferring with legal counsel for the governmental body. When the executive session ends, the school board meeting is adjourned.
Second.
All right, call the vote.
Good job.
Except
Mike?
I did
Yes.
what you did.
Cindy?
Yes.
Gary?
Yes.
Mary Beth?
Yes.
Barb? Matt?
Yep.
Now vote yes. All right. Just take a couple minutes.
2-minute recess.
Yeah.
4-3, Mary Beth.